We hated each other. Until the gardens. That was the thought that struck me the moment I saw him again, standing beneath sunlight that did not seem meant for ordinary men. But I suppose every story has where they begin. It was on a rainy day, not the gentle kind of rain the poets praise, but a relentless London downpour that soaked through cotton and dignity alike. My shoes were ruined, my hair clung to my face, and my hands trembled as I stood inside a narrow apothecary that smelled of crushed herbs and old wood. "My mother is ill," I said, my voice steady only by force. "Please, give me what I came for, the valerian tincture." The shopkeeper barely glanced up, his eyes moved over me slowly, and then he exhaled, almost bored. "We do not extend remedies to hopeful beggars," he said. "You will give me what I came for," stepping closer, "or I will make such a spectacle of this place that no one of your paying customers will dare step foot inside it again." My hands tightened against the wooden counter as I leaned forward, just slightly enough to make it clear that I wasn't bluffing. "Give me the vial." And in that moment, just as something reckless inside me began to rise fully to the surface, a voice, smooth and unhurried, cut through the air cleanly. "She will not be leaving." I turned. He stood near the doorway, rain trailing from the edges of his charcoal coat. There was nothing loud about him, but yet the entire space around him seemed to shift to accommodate his presence. "Edward Fisher." The shopkeeper straightened instantly. "My lord?" Edward did not seem to spare him a glance. His eyes were on me, calm and assessing, yet almost amused. "She is with me," he said lightly. "My fiancée, in fact, and I would advise you not to keep her waiting." The silence that followed was almost comical. I stared at him in amusement. Moments later, the vial was placed into my hands with trembling urgency. I should have left then, but I didn't, because when we stepped back into the rain, he turned to me with the faintest hint of smile and said, "You look as though you were about to declare war over that vial. I was curious how far you might go." "I would have won," I replied, before I could even stop myself. That earned me a real smile. And somehow, that was how it began. We walked without destination, through narrow streets where carriage wheels hissed against the wet stone, into a hidden bookstore tucked between buildings as though it wished not to be found. Inside, the world softened. We spoke, at first cautiously, and then freely. He spoke of travels, of expectations. There was something in his voice, it felt ethereal, that made me forget, just for a moment, the distance between us. And so, time slipped. The rain did not stop. The fire burned lower, and at some point we stopped speaking altogether. The last thing I remember was leaning back against the chair, the warmth of his body wrapped around me. I was far gone. But when I woke up, it was not gentle. It was sudden, like being pulled sharply from a dream I had no right to be having. The warmth came first, followed by the stillness, and then the realization. My head was resting against him. My breath caught so quickly it almost made a sound. What have I done? My gaze dropped at once. A stranger. A man I should have never allowed myself to sit beside, let alone sleep. I had fallen asleep in the presence of a man whose world did not even touch mine. And then the thought struck me like a cold water. My mother, the vial, the reason I had come out into the rain in the first place. A sharp wave of guilt rose so fast it burned. What kind of daughter forgets? I straightened slowly, gathering what little dignity I had left, my fingers tightening around the vial as though it might anchor me back to reality. So I turned, and I left before the warmth could follow me and the illusion could convince me to stay a little longer. By the time I reached the main street, the rain had stopped, but the weight in my chest had not. I reminded myself it was foolishness, but I made it halfway down the street before regret turned me back. I could not leave like that. I needed to thank him, to end it properly, at least for helping me with the vial. So I went back. The bookstore door was slightly ajar, and voices drifted through, male voices. There was laughter. I should have knocked, but instead, I paused, and I heard Edward's voice. Yes, she was charming enough. His tone light, almost careless. More laughter followed.
A passing amusement, then?
And the voice asked,
If you
"If you like." He replied,
I cannot imagine building a life upon such simplicity. She is unpolished, entirely unremarkable in refinement.
Hardly the sort of woman a fisher would ever consider beyond a moment's diversion. The words did not sound cruel. That was the worst part. They sounded effortless, like they cost him nothing at all. I did not remember leaving, only that by the time I had reached the end of the street, something inside me had already begun to harden into something cold. In the 19th century, a woman's reputation was like a glass ornament, beautiful but easily shattered. But psychology tells us that the strongest bonds are formed in the heat of a shared lie. When Penelope Clearwater met Edward Fisher, they did not fall in love, they fell into a conspiracy. Hi loves, welcome back to another tale. If you're a returning subscriber, I really appreciate you. And if you're new here, please join our circle by subscribing and turning on post notifications. 6 months later, I saw him again, and I hated him for how easily he still breathed. Aethelgard did not feel real. It perched along the coast, bathed in golden lights that seemed to linger longer than it should. It was there my sister Harriet was to be married, and it was there I met Edward Fisher. Coincidentally, my sister was marrying his cousin. I saw him before he saw me, standing on the terrace, speaking with effortless ease among people who looked exactly as one would expect his equals to look, perfect and untouchable. Then his gaze shifted and landed on me. Recognition came instantly, so did something sharper. "Well," he said as I approached, "if it's not the lady who vanishes with the dawn, and if it is not the gentleman who mistakes cruelty for wit," I replied, my smile just as composed. To anyone watching, we might have appeared charming. Every exchange that followed was wrapped in civility, laced with something very dangerous. This was no simple dislike. It was something wittier, something that lingered even the estate noticed, but the garden most of all. Our eyes held just a moment too long. It was charged with something that refused to soften, and that was where it began. In a soft, non-catastrophic way, almost as though the garden itself was listening, the breeze that had been drifting lazily through the terrace seemed to come to a soft halt. And then, almost imperceptibly at first, the petals began to darken, the whites slowly giving way to the crimson, turning petal by petal until the soft blooms became something deep, something that felt exactly like the moment we were standing in. It was beautiful, but no longer gentle. I noticed it, and so did he, but neither of us spoke about it, because that would have meant acknowledging something neither of us wished to name. As the days before the wedding progressed, the tension deepened. My parents arrived soon after with Lord Julian, kind, gentle, entirely predictable. He spoke softly, laughed easily, looked at me as though I was something fragile and in need of protection. They wanted me to marry him. Of course, they did. He was safe and easily acceptable. He was everything Edward Fisher was not, and Edward had his own complications. There was Lady Margot, beautiful, elegant, the kind of woman who belonged effortlessly in his world, and yet not quite his anymore, as they were no longer together. She had also been invited to the wedding, and I had seen it. The way Edward's expression had shifted around her, like something long buried within him, had stirred without permission. I told myself it did not matter. In fact, I told myself a great many things that evening, but none of them followed me into my parents' chamber. The moment the door shut behind me, the air was instantly heavy. My mother turned first. Her smile stretched thin with urgency. "Penelope, sit," she said quickly. My father did not bother with pretense. "You will explain yourself," he said. I did not move further into the room. "There is nothing to explain," I said. "There is everything to explain," my mother insisted, her voice rising just slightly. "Your behavior this evening, your distance from Lord Julian, your reluctance." "Reluctance?" I echoed softly. "Yes," my father said sharply. "Reluctance, disinterest, defiance. Choose whatever word you prefer, but do not pretend it has gone unnoticed." I let out a quiet breath, pressing my hands together just to keep myself still. "I have been polite." "Polite?" My mother laughed under her breath, though there was no humor in it. "Politeness does not secure a future, Penelope." "No," my father added, his tone cutting through the room. "Marriage does." "I'm aware," I said. "Then act like it," he replied. "And what of me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper now. "What of what I want?" Neither of them answered, because we all knew the truth. It did not matter. The silence stretched long enough to feel like an answer in itself. Then my father spoke again, quieter but not less firm. "You will spend time with Lord Julian. You will allow him to see you as a suitable match, and you will not squander this opportunity over your feelings that you cannot afford." Something in me folded. "I understand," I said, though the words felt distant, as though someone else had spoken them. "Good," my mother replied quickly, relief flickering across her face. "That is all we ask." It wasn't, but I did not argue. I turned before they could say more, before I could hear it again. The moment I stepped out into the corridor, the air felt different. My chest still felt tight, my thoughts louder than ever. Marriage, expectations, Julian, a future that did not seem to feel like mine. And then, Edward, the one person who somehow complicated everything simply by existing. I did not think, I did not plan. I simply moved through the quiet halls, past the fading lights of the evening, until the air shifted softly into the scent of nice blooming flowers. The gazebo stood just ahead, draped in pale vines that shimmered faintly under the moonlight, and he was already there. Of course he was, as though the night itself had arranged it. He did not turn immediately, but when he did, his expression told me enough. He had his own burdens, his own expectations pressing just as tightly. For a moment, we simply looked at each other. No pretense, no sharp words, just understanding. "It appears," he said at last, his voice quieter than usual, "that we are both being managed." A faint humorless breath left me. "Yes," I said relentlessly. "And you have been presented with a solution?" he asked. Silence settled between us again, but this time it was different, nothing hostile. "Then perhaps," he said carefully, "we might offer them a solution of our own." I met his gaze. "What are you proposing?" I asked. His lips curved, not quite into a smile, but close enough to feel like one. "Something convincing," he said. And just like that, the idea took root. We made a decision that should never have been made. "We pretend we're together," he said. "You gain your freedom from your family," he continued. "And being seen with me by your ex would make her jealous to want you back, and you regain your pride," I finished. His gaze held mine, steadily searching. Good. We understand each other perfectly. But we did not even slightly, because the moment our hands touched, just briefly, just to seal the arrangement, we both felt something, and somewhere beyond us, the garden breathed. The performance began at dinner. Lingering glances, soft laughters, carefully measured intimacy. It was almost too easy. When Edward rose to give a toast, the room fell silent. "To Miss Clearwater," he began, lifting his glass. "A lady of remarkable sincerity, unburdened by the rigid expectations that so often diminishes true character." A murmur of approval moved around the room. To find someone so refreshingly unrefined in spirit, so untouched by the exhausting demands of perfection, is rare. His words sounded like praise, but hearing every word that came out from his mouth, unrefined, lesser, untouched, my smile did not falter. Later in the garden, I did not wait. Was that necessary? I asked, my voice low. I believed I was being generous, he replied. Generous? I stepped closer. You insult me before an entire room and call it generosity? I described you accurately, he responded. You described me as something beneath you, I responded furiously. And yet, he stepped closer now, his voice quieter. You stand here as though you belong nowhere else. The silence that followed was charged. The vines along the stone arch trembled faintly. You left that day in the library, he said then, softer now. Without a word, I stilled. And you spoke, I replied. You said I was unpolished, too simple a name for the fishers. His jaw tightened. You wounded my pride. I couldn't bear being seen as the man who a stranger that captivated him bailed on. Do you think that day meant nothing? He asked, almost too quietly. I think, I said, my voice unsteady now, that you say what suits you in the moment. Something unguarded reflected in his expression. If that were true, he said slowly, I would not find it so difficult to forget a girl who was meant to be nothing more than a passing thought. The words hung between us. The flowers around us bloomed fully, then stilled, and just like that, the moment shattered as we turned away from each other, too proud to stay, too affected to pretend otherwise. But the garden had already begun to remember us. The following days unfolded in a strange quiet, like nothing had truly settled. We still spoke when required, still stood beside each other when washed, still performed the illusion we had created. But something had shifted beneath it all. The tightness was gone. Something lingered in the pauses between words, in the way our hands almost brushed and then didn't, in the way silence now said more than anything we dared to speak. The masquerade ball came. The Everbloom house stood lit like something out of a dream. Lanterns suspended in the open garden like captured stars. Music drifted through evening air, soft violins blending with low murmur of aristocratic laughter, faces hidden behind delicate masks. I wore a gown I could barely recognize as my own, and for once, I looked like I belonged. When Edward approached me, he did not speak immediately. He stared in earnest admiration and longing. You seem to ease tonight, he finally said. Appearances are everything, are they not? I replied. A faint smile touched his lips. You have learned quickly. But when his hands found mine, leading me towards the center of the garden, something about the gesture felt different. It felt less practiced and more certain. The music shifted, softer, slower, as we moved together with a familiarity that should have not existed between two people who once could barely stand each other. And yet, it did. You're very convincing tonight, I said quietly. And you are not? He asked. I hesitated, because truthfully for a moment, I had forgotten. Around us, laughter continued, conversations flowed. The world remained exactly as it should be. But between us, something had gone terribly, beautifully wrong. And just quietly enough to break everything, Lady Margot approached him. Even through the mask, her presence was unmistakably so poised. I wondered how long you would continue this little performance, she said, her voice low, almost amused. Edward did not release my hand immediately, but he did not hold on either, and that was enough. There was something in her tone, something that unsettled even me. I do not see how that concerns you, Edward replied. She stepped closer, close enough that the space between them felt very familiar. And then she reached for him, without any desperation or urgency, only elegance. And when she leaned into him, when her voice dropped into something softer, something meant only for him, I turned away. I moved behind the broad trunk of an old tree, its bark cooled beneath my fingertips, and my breath caught somewhere between my chest and my throat. I told myself it was part of the plan. This is what I wanted. This was the outcome. So why did it feel like something had just been taken from me? I did not watch the moment itself. I did not need to. The silence that followed told me everything. And then, the garden changed. A faint rustle, a shift in the air, and then all at once the flowers began to fall. Petals drifted from their stems in a quiet, devastating cascade, white blush, gold, all fading as they touched the ground, leaving behind nothing but bare branches and endless green. The beauty did not die, it simply withdrew. I stood there, unable to move, as the world I had begun to believe in unraveled in silence. Penelope, his voice found me before I could gather myself. I turned, and there he was, looking at me as though nothing had changed, yet everything had. "It is working," he said. "The arrangement is serving its purpose." I let out a quiet breath, something between a laugh and something far more fragile. "Yes," I said. "How fortunate for us both." His brow furrowed slightly. "You seem displeased." "Displeased?" I repeated. "No, Mr. Fisher. I am relieved. This is precisely what we agreed upon, is it not? You have regained what you sought, and my parents have eased up on me ever since they started seeing both of us together." The words felt hollow in the moments they left me. Something in his gaze sharpened. "And yet," he said slowly, "you do not look like a woman who has gained anything at all." "And you," I replied, my voice tightened, despising myself, "do not look like a man who has won." Heavy silence stretched between us. "This was always the outcome," he said, after a moment. "We both knew it." "Yes," I whispered. "We did." His expression saddened, but I did not stay to say it. I left him there, beneath the lantern light that no longer felt warm. And for the first time since the rain-soaked afternoon in London, I did not look back. Time moved on, and Edward, he became distant, the kind of distance that felt absent even when we stood in the same room. It was 2 days to the wedding, and I took comfort moving through the gardens in the east wing just to clear my head. I had not intended to find him, and yet, when I stepped past the clipped hedges and into the Italianate parterre, there he was, Lord Julian, seated by the tiered fountain, sunlight resting easily on his shoulders. He looked up when he heard my steps, and the warmth in his expression was immediate. "Miss Clearwater," he said gently, rising at once. "I had hoped the garden might convince you to forgive its intrusion in your solitude." Despite everything, I found myself smiling. "It has done no such thing," I replied. "But I find I do not mind the intrusion." He seemed pleased by that, though he tried not to show too much. "May I ask for a walk?" "Nothing formal, only a final indulgence of our friendship, before the house claims us all again." There was no pressure or expectation, only kindness, making it difficult to refuse. As we slowly walked, we spoke then of smaller things, like poetry, the absurdity of certain traditions neither of us fully believed in. As we spoke, the garden responded in its quite impossible way. The flowers that lined the path seemed to glow, not brightly, with a soft, steady light, like breath held gently in the chest. It felt like peace. It was such a rare feeling that I'd almost not recognized it. His words were kind, too kind, and that was when I realized this was what my parents wanted for me: safety, simplicity, a life untouched by sharp edges. Julian slowed beside me, his gaze softened as he reached out, brushing something lightly from my hair. When he drew his hand back, a single pale petal rested between his fingers. "It seems the garden has taken a liking to you," he said, almost amused. "Or perhaps it's trying to make a point," I replied quietly. "And what point would that be?" I met his eyes then, And for a moment, just a brief moment, I truly wished I could be the person this moment required. "There's some things are gentle," I said. To anyone watching, must have looked perfect. Two figures walking side by side beneath soft light, sharing quiet words that carried no conflict. A story that could have been simple if only it had been real. But it wasn't. My heart longed painfully for someone else, a pain I bore alone in the dark, while everyone else thought we had something blooming. Across the estate, far from the softness of the garden, Edward Fisher sat in his study, surrounded by order. Leather-bound books lined the walls, papers spread neatly across the desk before him. He had not turned a page in nearly an hour. A knock came before the door opened just slightly. "Mr. Fisher?" Harriet's voice followed, warm and familiar. He did not look up immediately. "Miss Clearwater." She stepped inside, her expression bright with quiet contentment. "I hope I'm not interrupting. I only came for a book I believe was left here yesterday." "You are not interrupting," he replied, though his pen had stilled completely in his hand. She moved about the room with easy familiarity. "It has been such a joy seeing Penelope like this," she said lightly, almost to herself, as she searched a nearby shelf. Edward's grip on the pen tightened, subtle but deliberate. "Has it?" he asked. "Oh, very much so," Harriet continued, turning back towards him with a small smile. "She's in the garden just now with Lord Julian. They look quite harmonious together," she added, but not unkindly. "Julian has a very gentle way about him. He makes her laugh in a way I had not seen in some time." Edward did not move, not a single shift of posture, not a glance upwards, but the wood of the pen creaked faintly beneath the pressure of his fingers. A strong silence followed, filled with tension. Harriet seemed to sense it then, the weight of something unspoken settling into the space between them. "Well," she said gently, retrieving her book, "I shall leave you to your work." Edward inclined his head slightly. The door closed behind her with a quiet click, and still he did not move. Not until the image, uninvited and unwelcoming, had formed clearly in his mind. Julian's voice imagined as he spoke to Penelope, scenes of her effortless laughter in response to him. Her peace, given so easily to someone else. The pen in his hand bent just slightly further. This time he felt it. A warm, yet cold feeling coursing through his veins. The morning of the wedding finally arrived, with sunlight that felt ethereal. Harriet looked radiant and joyful as I watched her walk towards a future she had chosen with all her heart. I felt something shift inside me. It was not envy, just clarity, that love, when real, did not hesitate. It did not bargain. By the time the celebration was close to its end and the dance floor opened, Edward stood across the gardens, Margot approaching him. I knew I could not stay, so I quietly left. I headed straight for the docks. The docks were wrapped in soft fading light, the scent of salt heavy in the air as the steam packet prepared for departure. I pulled the borrowed coat closer around me, and this time I would not return. But it turned out in the moment I left the wedding, as Margot danced with Edward, something had happened. He felt my absence. As their bodies moved to the music, Edward gave her a smile that felt like his heart belonged somewhere else. "You seem uneasy. You need to relax," Margot said with her luring voice. She leaned in close to reach for his lips with hers, but instinctively, he took a slight step back. "I'm sorry, Margot. I truly am. But I have made a terrible mistake and I need to go." He searched through the gardens for my presence, but found none. But a man who has denied himself for something so long was filled with the resourcefulness of 10 men to find me. He rode without restraint, without caution, through the paths that blurred into nothing but instinct and urgency. Branches caught at his coat, wind tore through his composure, but he did not slow. Somewhere behind me, far beyond the sound of water and the low hum of the departing engines, almost taking off, a horse thundered across the earth. A man who had never once allowed himself to be undone finally did. I did not hear him at first, only the sound of my own thoughts louder than they had ever been. Until Penelope, breathless and unsteady, but real. I turned, and there he was, without any hidden mask or performance, standing before me as though the world had finally fallen away. I stepped out of the boat, running back to the docks. I was wrong, he said as he finally approached, the words coming out without hesitation, without polish. I was wrong about everything, he gasped. I said nothing because I needed to hear it. I thought I understood what matters, he continued, his voice softer now, but breathing hard. I thought I knew what I wanted, but all I have done is run away from something I did not know how to hold. He stepped closer. I do not care about the fisher name, he said. I do not care for expectations or reputation, or any of the things I once believed defined me. I care only for the girl who stood in the rain and refused to be turned away. I thought I wanted the past, he continued, his voice almost breaking now. But it is nothing compared to what I feel when I am simply near you. He stood just before me, close enough that I could see everything. He was no longer hiding. The world seemed to still, the wind softened. Even the distant water fell quiet. I have loved you from the moment you walked away from me, and I have not stopped ever since, he said, his voice steady now and certain. The words settled between us, and for the first time, I believed him. Something in my chest loosened. The silence that followed was not empty, it was full of everything we had refused to say until now. And somewhere far behind us, the gardens began to slowly bloom again, petals returning to their place as though guided by something unseen. I stepped closer without feeling the need to turn away, and that quiet glow of the Aethelgard, where flowers whispered what hearts could not, we finally chose each other, and that was the end of a story once shaped by hate, and the beginning of something softer, molded by love. In the psychology of emotional defensiveness, we often build walls of scorn just to protect ourselves from appearing too vulnerable, and the Aethelgard's garden only bloomed when they stopped lying to themselves. Leading me to asking you all, have you ever had a rival who turned into your greatest love? I'd love to hear in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on post notifications. Thanks for watching. Bye.